Good morning, everyone. It looks like it's 10 a.m. Central Time where I'm located, and that is actually our official start time. It looks like we have a pretty small group today. We had a lot more on our RSVP list, but I guess people, if they can join, they will filter in as they can get logged on. But I think we should go ahead and get started. Sometimes it's good to have smaller groups because people can ask some direct questions that way. So it's good to see everybody who's here, and thank you for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Julie Bates, and I'm the Donor Relations Manager for the International Elephant Foundation. I know that I emailed at least everybody that's probably on the call, so good to see you. A couple of housekeeping notes. We normally have questions. If you have questions, you can put those in the chat as we go through the presentation today. And then maybe at the end, we will have time where we can actually, since this is a smaller group, we can unmute and maybe just ask direct questions at the end of the presentation. Also, this session will be recorded because there will be a lot of people who aren't able to join us that will actually want the recording. So we will be recording as well. Also on the call today, we have Deborah, who is our executive director with us, and also Sarah Conley, our conservation coordinator. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Julie. And you guys all know Julie Bates, our donor relations manager. So thank you for that lovely introduction. And thank you all for being here. For today's conservation chat, we are so happy to welcome Dr. Naveen Pandey. Dr. Pandey, a Commonwealth Scholar for his Master's in Conservation Medicine at the University of Edinburgh, is the Deputy Director and Veterinary Advisor for Kaziranga, Northeast India for the Corbett Foundation. A conservation practitioner and cultural ecologist, Dr. Pandey plans, executes, and monitors projects on nature conservation and cultural ecology in 6 states in India. His projects on mitigating human-wildlife conflict, landscape epidemiology, ecological restoration, and social dimensions of conservation touch indigenous communities in distant landscapes. He has been associated with numerous granting organizations, is very well respected. He's a prolific writer and has widely contributed to international journals, popular writings, mainstream news portals, and so on. We are so happy to have him here. IEF is currently supporting Dr. Pandey's work, supporting the fringe villages around Kaziranga National Park since 2020. So we have a lovely history with him, and we are excited to share this work with you all. So I'm going to turn it over to him. We'll learn a little bit more about what he's doing, and then we will have hopefully a great discussion where you guys can get all your questions answered.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah, for this introduction. I'm really grateful to the International Elephant Foundation for supporting my work and for supporting the Corbett Foundation in India, especially during the difficult COVID times, actually. So thank you very much. I'd like to share my screen. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, we can see it.
Thank you. So I'd like to talk about the engagement for the community that we have undertaken through this grant from IEF, and how that whole work started and what we have been doing. So as I understand, I'll be speaking for 15 to 20 minutes, and then we can interact more as it's a small group size. So it will be quite easy for us to interact. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to speak a couple of minutes on the Corbett Foundation. So it was established 27, 28 years ago in India, in the Corbett landscape. by an industrialist called Dilip Khatau, and he happens to be our chairman as well. And the entire mission of uh, Corbett Foundation is to promote coexistence of wildlife and human beings. So, because our mission statement is guided by that ideology of coexistence, we work quite a lot on the on the interface where human beings and wildlife interact. Um, we are guided by two very senior scientists in India, Dr. AJT Johnson, who has retired from the Wildlife Institute of India as a dean, and Dr. Asad Rahmani, who retired as a director of Bombay Natural History Society, one of the leading organizations in the country for natural sciences. So we are quite lucky to be guided by two the most knowledgeable scientists in the country at present. We have been now working in 6 states in the country, and as you can see from this map that we work in different landscape which are dominated by different challenges and different species that seek different approach for conservation at the grassroots level. So this map shows on the extreme left in the western part of the country, we are working on great Indian bustard. In the central part is mostly dominated by tigers, whereas the Himalayan Tarai area is dominated by elephants and Assam rhino. So we have been working with different kind of challenges in the country at present. Now, if we talk about human-elephant conflict, then we know that we have got a good population of Asian elephants. The last population count revealed around more than 30,000 elephants, and it was all India synchronized elephant count. So this number is quite reliable. And India as present has 32 wild elephant reserves to protect elephants. But then quite a lot of funding and attention goes to protecting tigers, whereas the field level implementation as far as elephant reserves are concerned, it gets not as much attention as a tiger project gets. And even though elephants are kept in Schedule 1 of our Wildlife Protection Act 1972 that provides maximum protection to elephants. But then in real life situation, because of their size, because of their long foraging behavior, migratory patterns, and their affinity for paddy and agricultural crops, there is a direct conflict with elephants, and then the habitat of elephants is shrinking day by day because of anthropogenic pressure in the country. I'll show some photographs clicked by my friend Dr. Raju Basumatari, and when we look at these photographs, like these are tea gardens, and this is from our landscape where I work, and you will see that human and elephant interaction is almost on a daily basis. Actually, this is even when it is not dark, elephants would be in paddy fields, sometimes in tea gardens, and then of course they use tea gardens for as temporary shelter or for moving from one forest to the other forest, but then they come across human beings all over their ways. And as we look at these photographs, then sometimes it gives us a feeling as if the number of elephants have gone very high in the country, which is not very true. So the elephants are more visible because their habitual routes and habitats have got more and more fragmented, and because of their size and their visibility is quite high. So if you look at the image on the left, this I clicked in Assam, very close to where I work. This was 3 years ago, and uh, many farmers will put live electrical wires around their agricultural fields, and quite often elephants would come and then they are fatally wounded or killed. Most of the times they are killed. So this is one of such photographs. And like on an average, every year 100 elephants are being killed because of electrocution or poisoning or some other reason. And the number of human beings killed is 5 times more. And this conflict is actually escalating in the country. quite rapidly. If we look at only Assam, one of the states in Northeast India, we have around 249 elephants were killed in last 10 years for various reasons, but primarily because of electrocution. And almost all the cases of electrocution would be because people, marginal farmers mainly, they would put live live wire, electrical wire, and then elephants would be killed. And we also have a very bad record of trains hitting elephants because train tracks are actually fragmenting or going through the elephant uh, habitats. So these are quite common reasons for elephants being fatally wounded or killed in the Northeast India. And when these elephants are crossing through human habitations, often they come across very antagonistic behavior, and that fits in their memory, and they also tend to retaliate at times in a very bad manner. So overall, this conflict situation is there where currently I'm based, and as most of the conflict takes place in paddy fields or in tea garden areas, we tend to understand how people have been dealing with elephants, and if we can change their approach, or how we can bring in awareness so that the direct conflict could be minimized, or there could be a way of coexistence. So in that direction, our project has been working very hard for last, actually we have been working for last 7 years, and the last 3 years had been very difficult, and thanks to IEF we had been able to continue our program. This is a scene of Kaziranga when it gets flooded. So as you can see, this is the Kaziranga National Park in the month of August, and all the animals, most of the animals who are inside the park, they have to cross the national highway and then go on the safer side. And while this movement takes place, there is a lot of conflict that goes on. So this further complicates conservation issues in Kaziranga. In our approach, actually, we focus quite a lot on capacity building, and we directly intervene in human-elephant conflict mitigation through our field-based interventions and activities. But at the same time, we make good effort to provide awareness on coexistence, like how farmers probably could avoid a conflict situation, or how they could identify herds coming before the herds enter their fields, you know. And whatever interventions we have taken, we conduct an assessment once we run the project for 2 years or 4 years. And based on the findings, we try to publish it and circulate widely so that even others can probably replicate the study in their own areas. So if we talk basically on the left side, what we see are the illustrations. These are from one of our awareness posters that I have used in this slide actually. So chasing elephants with sharp objects, with fireballs, and even fencing, as I said earlier, using live wire to fence agricultural fields or human settlements, and sometimes making big size trenches. Like in tea gardens, trenches are made for water drainage as per the need of the crop. But then these are also death trap for elephants. So when compared to these, we tend to suggest people to make traditional crop guarding systems, which they have been using for quite a long time. But then we studied those structures and machinery, how people protect their crops and how those could be modified. So this is the area that I'm talking about. You can see within India, in the northeast, we have this Assam, and this green area in this right side uh, image is the Kaziranga National Park, and the red line which is going on the southern boundary of the park is a national highway which bisects Karbi Anglong Hills and Kaziranga National Park. So Karbi Hills are on the southern part of this national highway where animals have to go to take shelter during the annual flooding time. So these black dots are the villages where we have been operating for our human-elephant conflict mitigation, and most of these dotted sections on this map are actually paddy fields, and in that there are villages and households scattered. So practically in uh, every paddy season, especially from August till January of one cropping season, there will be intense conflict starting from September, and it goes till middle or late of January, and most of the conflict would be at night time. So we have been, this is another map which shows where we have been operating actually. So we did study the traditional tools that people have been using. And one observation is that most of the objects are sharp. And for using these, there is a need of close contact with elephants. So it is risky for human beings who have got probability of coming in contact with elephants. And this is harmful for elephants because the wounds inflicted by these sharp objects could turn septic, and it could affect elephants very badly. So somehow we felt that this particular way of protecting crops is not very safe, or it's not, definitely not elephant friendly at all. So, and then you can see in the third image, the left bottom image titled C, you can see that for lighting at night, or to chase away elephants, or even to see direction at night, people use some spent engine oil in this metallic can, and they would use it for burning it because strong light source is supposed to deter elephants. So these are some of the ways that farmers have been protecting their crops. And while we studied actually the distribution, and then we realized that burning tire, shouting, crackers, so the farmers have been trying different types of tools. And elephants, being very intelligent species, they get used to a particular kind of mitigation strategy. So farmers have to try out different things. What we realized that this is a kind of lookout points, what locally this is known as tongi. And quite often in our project area, people would make their lookout point in the middle of their agricultural crop. So if we look at elephant behavior, so as long as the elephants have not entered the fields, it is relatively easier to drive them back or to deter them by using light. But once they have entered the fields, then it becomes quite difficult to send them back, because then they take the risk of staying and prolonging their time, and then they will like to forays, and then only they leave. So in this conventional method of building the lookout point in the middle of crop field, actually it is not very effective way. We found that after doing a lot of uh, focused group discussions, and sometimes we did transact walk with elders in the villages, and we thought that this needed to be realigned to the movement of elephants. So uh, we conducted quite a lot of village level meetings before we could persuade people to join in this effort that we were talking about. So what we did primarily was that in the middle, you can see the traditional lookout points design. So it would be small. It would often be used by just one family. And then every day the family has to come and spend time at night, and people would use sharp objects. They will use engine oil for light. When compared to this, we propose that we increase the size of the lookout point so that 5 different family representatives could occupy each lookout point, and then they could establish a roster pattern. So every day everybody didn't need to come actually. This could be made into a community effort for protecting their crops from elephants, rather than an individual trying on his own to do this. And then we replaced the engine oil lighted fire with a powerful torch light, which we had tested quite well for the last 4 or 5 years, and we have a very strong feedback on that torch, which is rechargeable, so we don't need to replace batteries. There is no recurring cost, and it comes with a, it's made in India, so it can be repaired. And then we established a rotation of guarding and connected. Our primary approach was to realign the lookout points based on elephants movement, and that's what we did in the, like, we walked with the villagers, all the areas, we mapped them with GPS locations, and we drew maps with GIS, and we tried to understand how best the lookout points could be placed in order to identify the movement of elephants beforehand, so that they could be deterred to come inside from a distance. The primary idea was to reduce the probability of human beings and elephants coming in close proximity, because this was harmful for both. And for that, as I said earlier, we conducted hundreds of village cluster level meetings. We included teachers, tea garden workers, villagers, community workers, even health workers, but primarily teachers. We found that teachers are very strong source of community mobilization. As you can see in this photograph, we have got teachers with us speaking to the community on our behalf, and the teachers actually belong from the community. Like Mr. Leknath Sharma, one of the teachers in one of our project sites, he has been tremendously helpful. And once the community agrees that they will not use sharp objects, then we go on and we support with a roof. We modify the design, and community's contribution is in the form of bamboo and labor. So as you can see here, the design is different here, and in this picture the design and of the lookout point is different. So it depends on what actually the structure is going to be built, but it is the community which provides their labor free of cost for doing this job. And from the project, we support them with this galvanized iron sheets, which they find it difficult to afford. And then they agree to for two things especially. Number one is that they will not use sharp objects, and number two, that they will accept to work in a community mobilized manner and not as individually guarding their crops. So once they agree and understand for these two things, then we go ahead and we help them in making uh, these structures. And this is the powerful torchlight I was telling about. We have recommended this to many organizations, and even we have provided to Forest Department, so that I mean, if you look at this one, like people would, this is one of the traditional lights you can see on the left side, and people would go in chasing elephants using this kind of light. Whereas if people are stationed on their strategically placed lookout points, and if they use this powerful rechargeable torchlight, flashlight, then at least the probability of elephants and human beings coming in direct contact can be greatly reduced. So here you can see how elephants would come at night. This is a small stream which separates the paddy fields from Kaziranga National Park, and when the elephant has to come to feeding on paddy fields or paddy crop, then it has to cross the river and come. Now this is what I was telling actually. Once we make lookout points and people are stationed there, they quite a lot of time these strong powerful beams, it deters elephants, and even people can make collective sounds rather than going to chase elephants. In fact, our observation is that when people chase elephants, then they cause more damage, because then they lose sense of direction and position, and then there is a lot of chaos in which quite a large area of crops get trampled. So in some of the locations, we have advocated community managed solar fencing as well. And if you look at the image on the top right, these posts are made of bamboo, not cemented posts that we generally see in solar powered fencing. And the community has a control on it. And this is used only for 4 months when the crop is there in the field. After harvesting, the villagers will dismantle this structure, roll it down, and keep safely within their community house. And then they reinstall it again after 8 months when new crop season starts. So this has been working quite well, actually. And I think this should be studied by agencies from outside as well. And then as I said earlier, we did conduct impact assessment, and our observation is that the per family annual income has marginally increased from nearly 800 USD to 1200. It is not marginal, but it has gone up. And we have produced some data based on sampling of the families and tongis that we have studied. And then we have also tried to understand how people are spending the additional time that they have saved by not attending crop guarding duty every day, because in the roster system, they don't need to be present every night, actually. So quite a lot of them have better social life, and they spend times watching TVs and interacting with their kids. And some of them, they reported that their socialization has enhanced, and this has added to the overall well-being of their life. So there are positive changes. We have been able to produce some scientific literature in quite good journals, and we have also written articles, popular articles for common people to follow. We designed some beautiful awareness posters asking people to adopt elephant-friendly methods for their protection of their properties. We also assessed economy of that spent engine oil being used for making fire, and for 40 lookout points, they spend around 800 US dollar in 4 months, because they have to buy the spent engine oil and then they have to burn it. We are going to work on the carbon footprint of this activity, but it's going on, so the data is not presented here. And this already I have discussed that the crop protection is increased, and the cost on guarding the crop has come down. So these are very important findings of this assessment method. And we strongly suggest that we should study the traditional methods of human-elephant conflict, and then we should try to find out how we can add value to it rather than inventing altogether new methodologies. It is better to modify the existing ones to 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 make it more effective. And we believe that it is very important for agencies like International Elephant Foundation to keep engaging with elephant range countries in Asia, especially for advising, funding, and partnership opportunities. And with this, I'll close my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was amazing. I think I speak for everyone when I say it's very inspirational to see the actual measurable differences that the project is making in people's lives. Because I think what we need to realize is the people who share their landscape with elephants are the ones that will ultimately make the decision about whether we will conserve them or not, and whether we can have them in the future. So I think what you're doing is really making an impact. Please, everyone, put your questions in the chat. I know that there is a lot of information that we just learned. So if you have any questions or comments, throw them out there. For now, let me ask you, can you talk us through a little bit what it's like for a family to guard against elephants, um, what they go through to kind of scare them away or herd them away, from an emotional context, what it's like to live with that kind of threat and that fear.
Well, for the last 8 years, I have been living with a community which lives with elephants every day, every night. And I'll tell you that by the month of September, by 4 p.m. in the evening, elephants will start descending on the paddy fields. So the male member of a household would spend 4 months every night away from his family. Every night, I'm stressing, every night away from his family in the paddy field. It gets quite, quite cold at night, especially November and December are cold months here. And the representative of the family has to be there around 4 p.m. and he can't go back till the next morning around 5 or 6 because elephants would be there till 5 in the morning also. And it is the risk actually when farmers they go in their paddy fields to protect their crops, it carries tremendous risk. It is not for faint-hearted actually. I have been with the villagers when they protect their crops. I've been with the group that follows elephants or drives them away, and I must tell that it is sometimes it gets really scary because we just don't know from where elephants may come. So it is very stressful for the family head as well as for the women folks who are staying back. Now imagine someone not having dinner with family for 4 months and not being able to spend time with kids, and the kind of threat that the man carries every night is tremendous. I think it's emotionally very, very challenging, uh, and the people who protect their crops, their income is very low. So when I say very low, some of them would earn probably say 40,000 rupees in 1 year, and which is uh, well, say around 500 USD. Uh, that's it. And for that amount of money, they have to take risk. And then because agriculture is rain dependent in this part of 1 year, so their fields will be utilized only once for 4 months, and remaining 8 months that person grows nothing because the crop is rain dependent and natural rain dependent, and the practice of extracting water from ground is not very common in this part, and so I find it very, very challenging personally.
Yeah, it sounds like a very difficult situation and a difficult life. So it must mean a lot to people that there's this focus not only on the animals but on their well-being. Um, so you said there's only one growing season because of the water availability. What crops are they growing?
So at present, all the farmers would grow here rice, and as the rice crop ripens, it starts emitting a characteristic fragrance which attracts elephants quite a lot. So the more the crops would ripen, the more intense the conflict becomes, and sometimes elephants would be so tempted that they won't even wait for it to become dark actually. So you can practically see them coming up. And sometimes what happens when we are in the field actually on one side of the river, and then you can see elephants literally hanging around on the other bank waiting for it to get dark so that they would come. And they're so intelligent actually. So when there are forest guards patrolling the fringe villages, so to protect villagers, the forest department also actively participates. Then the elephants would know by what time the forest rangers would return. So
Wow.
then they would wait till that time, and then they cross the river and then come. And by the third week of December, it is quite cold. It's very cold, and and the villagers will curl in a old quilt in their lookout points, and they are more likely to fall asleep actually, but then the elephants, they start coming from out from the forest and crossing the river and entering the paddy field.
Wow. We have some questions in the chat. I think people are pretty inspired by what you're talking about. So Kathleen would like to know what proportion of areas with human elephant conflict or human elephant interaction does your work cover in India? So I think she's talking about, have you trialed it just in Kaziranga? Are there other areas where these taunting?
Yeah, okay. No, thanks. This is very important for us to know. So now in India, we have different pockets of elephant population with some degree of connectivity, which allows movement between those populations. But still, we have distinct populations in different forests in the country. And in Northeast India, Assam has the highest population of elephants, and in Kaziranga, we have more than 1,000 resident elephants. If I use the word residents, actually, they are long distance foraging animals, but still we have at any given point of time, we have more than 1,000 elephants in this area. And if we look at a bit of Golaghat and all, yes, then the population is quite big. So we are operating in this part of Northeast India. So I will say that we would be touching more than 50% of the conflict area that we see here. But then if we look in other states, so we don't work in South India. There are elephants in Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, but then we don't operate in South India. We have a human-elephant conflict mitigation program in Ramnagar area, which is the Corbett tiger landscape, where we use a different method, where we are more interested in encouraging farmers to adopt alternate cropping patterns, which are not uh, preferred by elephants. So because in Kaziranga, rice is the only crop that most of the farmers would grow. Uh, some farmers would grow mustard as well in a different season, not coinciding with rice production, but in a different season. So there is not a great uh, degree of flexibility for farmers to try out different crops. So here our approach is more on protecting what could be grown. Whereas in case of our efforts in northern part of India, I'm talking about a place which is 6 hours drive further north of Delhi, which is Corbett National Park. It was the first national park in the country, established in 1935. So there we try out more on securing the entire village with solar powered fence. That is one method. And also try out different crops, because they have got a market for different medicinal plants, and chamomile, and then people have flexibility. The climate is probably more favorable, where experiments could be done on changing crops. And in central India now, when we talk about Kanha Tiger Reserve, Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve, central India had lost its tiger population some more than 150, 200 years ago. And sorry, I'm talking about elephants. So there were no elephants for the more than 100 years in central India's Bandhavgarh National Park and all. But 5 years ago, because of habitat degradation and mining work in some of the states, elephant-bearing states, especially Orissa, Chhattisgarh is adjoining state of Madhya Pradesh. So elephants from Chhattisgarh, they moved into Madhya Pradesh, and now I use the word they have like regained their territory or recolonized what their home was over 200 years ago. So if we read Forsyth, with a British man who has documented Central Indian landscape quite well more than 150 years ago. So he did mention about elephants, and in based on some of his observations. So elephants have now started coming in Bandhavgarh, and but then again the kind of danger in Bandhavgarh is different, which where elephants are actually attacking people who are guarding their crops in lookout points. So we have been working in that area to understand what kind of mitigation measure will work there. This the way that we are doing in Kaziranga is, it's not that it will apply everywhere else, but yes, we are working for elephant conservation in Northeast India, in Central India, and in the northern part of the country around Corbett landscape. Thank you.
That's an excellent question, and it actually sort of answers another question that's in the chat. Someone was asking if these communities are using this style of crop protection and spreading that and news of their successes to other communities.
Even in Kaziranga, like we keep getting now groups of farmers in our office. So the farmers themselves, they keep coming to us and they want to adopt this kind of approach, and they seek help in establishing groups. So when we start working in a village, we make a small groups or clusters of 6 different families, and that's how actually we start operating. So the villagers, they themselves, they come to us because when in the weekly markets in this landscape, there are different areas where weekly markets take place, and these markets work as a place where a lot of ideas and thoughts are exchanged between people from different villages. So quite a lot of them, they hear about our approach from weekly markets, and our project has been covered by print and electronic media very well, so people come to know about it, and we have been like, I will not use the word flooded with a request, but of course we keep getting a lot of visitors asking for a replication in their villages.
Excellent. No, that's good. And we have a lot of people asking sort of about that approach and the spreading of this throughout. So it's good to know that there's interest and that people are adapting it. Someone was saying, do you know of other locations that are making similar efforts? If yes, are they having similar results? And are there other models that communities are using protecting themselves from different types of animals? So that brings another interesting question. Are elephants the only crop eaters that people are worried about?
No, it's not only elephants which are crop raiders. I will just open a document. I definitely want to show something. Yes. So, 1 minute. Can I share my slides,
Yes,
my
please.
screen again?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, right. I'm sharing my screen, and you can see table number 2. Is it visible to you?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is from one of my papers published last month, and here you can see different animals. Like we have listed 7 animals which with their severity index calculated after participatory risk mapping exercise in different villages. And you can see, of course, that Asian elephants top the list as far as incidence index and risk index are concerned. But there are wild boar, and there is tiger, rose-ringed parakeet, greater one-horned rhinoceros, hog deer, and wild buffalo. These animals were listed who were venturing into the villages. And I think that this answers your question. I like to share an experience as well. So it was around 4 or 5 years ago. A lady who was sleeping in her hut adjoining the national park, she was grabbed by a tiger at around 4 o'clock in the morning with her elbow, and she was pulled out of the hut for around 50 meters. And as the tiger was about to cross the rivers, some villagers they saw who were guarding their crops, and they used torchlight, and the tiger dropped the woman, and we were called to intervene. And around that time, the cases of cattle lifting or cattle injury by tiger had also gone up. So we set up camera traps in the village. I'm just talking about one village. We set up multiple camera traps to understand the reason behind one tiger visiting that particular village. And we were surprised that in one camera trap we got 9 different species of animals visiting the village. So that matches with the data or the table that I have shown from one of my publications. And we got different kinds of animals visiting villages for their different needs. Sometimes a prey species would be a temptation for a large cat to visit a village or even their own animals. But crop raiding is mostly by elephants as well as with by wild boars. There is hog deer. There are rhinos which are venturing into paddy fields. And rhinos, they love the small saplings of the rice which come out as at the first step, which are replanted. So those are the stalks from where actually rice replantation will be done. And rhinos, they just love that particular thing. So there are different species, but the trouble is that elephants being very big, so they are very easily visible, and somehow they create larger panic.
And that makes perfect sense. Um, so there's challenges from all kinds of wildlife, but of course, elephants get the larger focus because they can make a huge amount of impact or negative impact as they crop raid. Um, so more questions in the chat. People are really engaging with what you're saying, which is wonderful. So do you see evidence that people's emotions are shifting as they're using these new and revised mitigation strategies? I know you talked a little bit about the impact that you're having, but can you see the difference in people's demeanor and emotions?
Yes, yeah, definitely. While I'll say that people have, it's very difficult to measure tolerance. I've thought about it quite a lot, and I did a lot of field work. And despite having publications, I'm still thinking how to quantify tolerance. But then I have seen changed attitude. But I will also like to add here that people have tolerance for elephants because of religious reasons in this country, and they people don't want to harm elephants in Kaziranga, especially in Kaziranga, where the alternative sources of income don't exist other than farming. People are dependent on ecotourism, and people don't want to harm wild animals in Kaziranga. They somehow they want to coexist, but it is the trouble of protecting crops which brings elephants and human beings confronting each other. But still, I have seen that there is a lot of respect for elephants in villages, and I have attended quite a large number of accidents, injuries, deaths, postmortems, and wherever I have gone, I have seen people paying tribute to the body of elephants by putting flowers and all. So despite terrible images that we see, people throwing fireballs and all, uh, underneath there is a great degree of respect for elephants, which we must acknowledge as researchers, because if we don't recognize that basic level of uh, affinity and reverence, then probably our calculations of impact will not be justifiable. But yes, this because of our intervention, it is not only the tolerance, actually, it is also the social life and the quality of life of farmers have improved quite a lot. And that definitely translates in their general approach towards overall other animals or wildlife in general, actually. So it does make a positive impact.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think it's important to understand the sort of cultural context of it, because then when there are things like retaliatory killings and problems like that, people can really understand the stress and level of desperation that people have, uh, that's pushed them toward that, because there is such a reverence and cultural significance for the animals. Um, Another person's asking, have you considered using beehives and beehive fences for that? So talk about beehive fence use in these areas. I know it is sometimes successful in Africa, but we don't usually hear about it in Asia.
Yeah. So when I read about Lucy King's work in Africa with bees, uh, I did seriously read quite a lot in that context, and it was my wish to include it in some form in Kaziranga as well. So before going on making a project on this, actually, I called villagers meeting from different villages, and we put up this idea. We showed them the video from Lucy King's projects and all. And then I wanted to know from the villagers what they think about it, because beekeeping is practiced in this landscape quite successfully. So even in one of our livelihood projects, we have trained people in beekeeping and all, but then we had not connected beekeeping with, of course, with human elephant conflict mitigation. So when we opened up the idea to villagers for discussion, then they were apprehensive that our bees, local bees, probably they don't make that much of noise. And the other thing was that they said that our bees are not very active at night. And the third thing was like somehow it was it they just thought that it would not work. And then I didn't personally proceed with this. Of course, cost was also a consideration. But then there are uh, other groups which have done research on using bees in Maharashtra, especially in the southern Maharashtra, um, with varying degree of success. And of course, they are still experimenting and modifying their methodology. A lot of experts from institutions in beekeeping are being involved in research. And also in India also, bees are being looked at from the same angle that Lucy King has been successfully doing in Africa. But I will say that it is still in that experimental stage. I have not worked with bees.
Good to know. And I mean, I think it's worth noting that the species of bee is different in India than it would be with the ones that they're dealing with in Africa. So more research is definitely needed. We are coming up on time. So if anyone has any last minute questions, go ahead and throw them out there. Even unmute yourself and ask, because I know we're having a great discussion, but we can't keep Dr. Pandey all day. It's pretty late where he is.
Thank you.
Uh, all right. Well, I think we are pretty good. Everyone seemed to really enjoy all the great information that you have been sharing and all the insights. Thank you so much. I know that IEF really believes in the work that you're doing and the impact that you're making for both elephants and the communities. So thank you so much. I know everyone here is happy to have spent their mornings with you. So if everyone wants to turn your cameras on and give Dr. Pandey a round of applause, that would be amazing. Yay. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you for taking the time. We are honored to have you. And we will be sharing this recording with everyone. Julie, do you have any comments to wrap up?
I just want to thank everybody for coming on today. I see that we have a lot of current donors on the call, so thank you so much for all of your support. And if anybody else is on the call today who was inspired by Dr. Pandey's work, we really would appreciate if you'd like to send in a donation to help support his work. So thank you for everything that all of you are doing. We just really appreciate each and every one of you.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for spending your time with us and learning about the great work that's happening, that you're making possible, and that Dr. Pandey is absolutely making possible. Thank you so much, guys.
And we'll be sending the recording out.
Thank you, Dr. Pandey. That was excellent.
Thanks, ma'am. Thank you very much. And on behalf of the Corbett Foundation, I thank all the supporters of International Elephant Foundation for putting in your resources and time and affection, affinity, and love. Thank you very much.